Good afternoon, everyone. Special thanks to all my Adapt 2030 patrons. This video is possible because of your support. Wanted to talk about Wheeler's drought clock. We are repeating cycles. And when I talk about this, it is climate cycles, waves, smaller durations of time overlapping into longer durations. As you're seeing the floods pervade our planet, it is a cycle. This is how quickly we're going to enter the grand solar minimum compared to what we did in the Maunder minimum. We can track grand solar minimums through time and intensity. We know the forecast going out, how quickly it's going to cool, but also the wider the waves are, the wider those lines are, the more intense our weather becomes. And you can see the 2019 and 20 split is this amplification right here. At the very minimum, our weather is going to become 4 times more intense by 2021 than you're seeing today. We can map out where these changes are occurring, where they're going to cool again, where it's going to become more wet. But the problem is every time it cools and becomes wet, societies across the planet collapse. Civilizations collapse. Now, case in point, just the very last week or so, 2 typhoons combining over Japan, unexpected mega floods engulfing southern Taiwan, worst floods in a century in India, deserts flooding in Algeria, massive flooding in Kenya, 30 inches of rain in Hawaii, a before in California, and after. We got positive lightning in Italy, flooding streets in Italy, gorges in Italy. And anywhere you see pink here, this is torrential rainfall over the Adriatic region. UK about to plummet in temperatures 10 degrees Celsius below normal. And with all this rain, you can expect a city to be buried like this across the planet in the northern hemisphere during this coming winter. And join me on BitChute, where I'm starting to back up the Adapt 2030 channel. And I do thank all my Patreon subscribers. If you want to support and make videos like this possible, PayPal or Patreon, Adapt 2030. I wanted to start you off with Wheeler's drought clock here. Now what this is, a glimpse into time where repeating droughts come on cycles. Everything in our universe revolves around cycles. There's no such thing as linear time. We can always come back to a start point again, and we saw this through ancient history. They had mapped out all these cycles for us going back even millions of years. This particular Wheeler's drought clock maps out from approximately 200 AD until now, which is about 1900 years into the past. And we can see some of these grand droughts are on longer 510-year cycles, while others come in on the 100-year cycle. And you start to get overlapping cycles of 170, 510, 100 within each other. But then also in the Arctic, we have cycles of 9 years, and that would be the bottom on these climatic cycles. These really short duration. The pulse water heading into the Arctic, that's going to continue to cool and create more sea ice because the Atlantic water temperatures are cooler. So these 9-year water pulses pushing under the Arctic ice, it's not going to melt from beneath as quickly. And then we have more middle duration cycles, might be 60, and then in the center there 100 years. And at the very top, we might get something like this grand solar minimum that we're entering, 400-year duration, 800-year duration. Now see, the IPCC has trained you to believe that the climate has been so stable all the time through all the past that suddenly we just changed it today and just started changing right now because of us. Well, really, when you look through the past, go back through the last 2,000 years across the continents, and you can see how the temperature has varied. From heat, it's even been warmer in Antarctica than it is today. Go back 400 AD, 800 AD, and you'll start to see these temperature variances. And then we got the cooling, we got the warming. And it's just natural variability. It's happened all the time through history, and our climate's continuously changing. And then they'll come out, once you point that fact out and they know they're in a corner, they'll say, well, you're making it happen faster than it's ever happened before. But again, that's not true, especially look at the Younger Dryas and plunges in and out of extreme temperature swings. You'll find that through the ice core records everywhere you look. Now, this particular chart here shows us the top is the Maunder minimum. The bottom is the current eddy minimum that we are entering. Now you can see the duration of entry and how deep and how quickly the exit out of these, meaning how quickly the weather is going to change as we get into the depths of the cooling. And you can see in the Maunder minimum, they had 40, almost 50 years as it sort of slid into this grand solar minimum, where for us, we're just plummeting off a cliff. And the same type of research where they're measuring magnetic field in the sun shows you the duration and intensity of these. I put the black line in there so you could really see where the depths in the bottom were, how quickly it'll come out. And they can even map into the future based on projections with magnetic fields in the sun, what the next grand solar minimums will be in intensity, how much activity on the sun there will be, and then how cold or how hot these cycles will bring. We are expected to plunge into the deepest cooling that you can see on this chart here from 1200 AD all the way to 3200 AD. So in the 2,000 years of projections that they have here, our current time is going to be the coldest in 2,000 years, especially when we get around 2024 and 2025. There's so much research that's been done on this, and it's really startling how it's not making any of the debates in the climate change circles, because this is a main driver of why our climate's changing. Sunspot cycles, our magnetosphere weakening, which allows jet streams to move in different places like we're seeing right now. This is a great paper here. Grand minimum of the total solar irradiance leads to little ice age. And Dr. Buzamatov from the Pulkovo Observatory is just a single resource. Those last charts I showed you were Popov, Shepard, Zarkov, and Zarkova. And it just shows you our entry into this new grand solar minimum. That chart's a little squeezed there, so I'll bring it out for you here. We're in solar cycle 24 at the very bottom, and we're coming into solar cycle 25. And projections are for solar cycle 25, no more than 50 sunspots total. And as we come into solar cycle 26, which will run through 2030 to 2035-ish, we may have no sunspots at all, and we will absolutely repeat something in the Maunder minimum. This is the reference report here, Shepard, Zarkov, Zarkova, and Popov. The wider the wave is on this, how wide those lines spread, the more intense our weather becomes. I dropped in the arrows and the dots there so you could start to get a gauge of how much amplification there will be from year to year. Now at the very left where the arrows start in the yellow color, that's 2015-16. And as we get into the green shaded area, that's right now. That's literally July of 2018 moving forward. To get you a better indication of what's going to happen, the amount of weather change that you're seeing right now is nothing in comparison to what's coming. I mean, really, right now, I consider it completely stable weather. Although it's at the extremes for the floods, the heat, the wind, cyclonic events, whether it be tornadoes, waterspouts, or hurricanes, typhoons. We also have the electrification of our atmosphere, different layers in our atmosphere starting to electrify that haven't been seen before. This is a light version of what's about to happen to us over the next 2 years. So I really put it out here, two ways for you to look at it. Left side in the red is 2016 to 17. That's the full amount of change for that year in the climate that we saw a lot of amplification. And then we jump into the yellow bar, 2018 to 19. So you can see even further from 2019, it's going to increase again. It's going to double what we're already seeing. So next year's weather is going to be at least double the amplified incredible effects of cold, heat, and all the other extreme storms that you're seeing. Every storm now is a once in a 200-year flood. Well, it's going to increase to every storm is going to be once in a 400-year flood coming up by 2021. So you can see how the bars are starting to widen. That's how much change is coming as well. But what's startling is the 2016 to 17 compared to 2020-21 levels, that's like 6 to 7 times more intense. Now, when I'm talking about floods, this video's pretty much devoted to floods because this is Australia right here. You can start to see when they get to the extremes where you saw these flood and snow records being broken this last year and the year before in Australia. Once they have these extreme floods, they just dive off on the temperature and go into drought, which you're starting to see down in southern Australia. Expect no wheat or very little wheat to come from Australia this year. We're in crisis levels of wheat production at the moment, and they're going to be halting wheat exports for so many countries, so expect massive, massive changes in the price of wheat. Now, through these grand solar minimums, we actually know where the temperatures are going to drop and where it's going to become more wet based on past cycles. Now, you notice also in Alaska, where they always keep trying to point as the poster child for global warming, it's so hot in Alaska. Well, during these grand solar minimums, Alaska actually becomes warmer. And so does the southern part of Greenland in that ocean, although it's cooling this time, which is the opposite of what happened in at least the last 400 years of cycle. You notice North Africa, where it's really cold in Morocco, we're starting to see the same thing, record snows and cold there. And then all across Europe and Eurasia. Now, why would I even spend my waking hours studying this or bringing it to you through my hundreds and hundreds of videos? It's because every time these changes come, societies collapse, civilizations collapse, and we're set back. Every single time. If we didn't this time, it would be completely the first time ever that it hasn't set us back as a society and as a global civilization. Dark ages are pretty much what accompany these: economic collapse, population migration. These are the normal fingerprints of these grand solar minimums. And it's all tied to the extreme weather that comes. Unreliable growing seasons, unreliable harvest seasons. This has an determinant effect on rising food prices and affects the economy as people spend in different places. Once you can't work anymore, your power grid goes down, you're going to want to migrate to another place. Simple, just go back through history, find out where the grand solar minimums were. Everywhere it's blue, and hit a history book and see what happened during these times. You will be shocked, and you probably won't sleep for the next 3 nights thinking about it. I created my own charts here just based on Chinese society. Everywhere you see a bar was a grand solar minimum or a cooling event and a collapse of a dynasty. The emperor lost the mandate from heaven due to not being able to produce enough food for the citizens. Or it was a massive drought. They started infighting, the fiefdoms inside there, the kingdoms, if you will. And it's like regular clockwork. When the temperature drops, the jet streams shift and take moisture into different places. And you should start to see a lot of effects happening right in front of your eyes if this is beginning to happen again. So I'm going to run through just the last 10 days of it's in front of your eyes and it's happening again. I'm putting the causation first to show you the effect second. Start here. Double typhoons combining over Hokkaido Island after super soaking South Korea and North Korea. They needed the water anyway. It's almost as if those typhoons are being steered to deliver water. But then Hokkaido's going to get, record snow again. Now here's the thing. Out of Taiwan, southern Taiwan had these massive floods that were totally unexpected. It even caught the Weather Bureau off guard of how much water came. They were not even expecting this storm to form. And then suddenly you're getting not even extremely heavy rains, but cancel everything, evacuations, emergencies everywhere. Somehow in just a matter of hours, this popped up to beyond torrential rains. And it turned into its own system that is now moving. But it's not a cyclonic type of typhoon. It's just a rain event, atmospheric compression event forming over land and then going to move over to China. You got to realize this formed in 12 hours and started so much massive flooding that it stranded thousands of people, where they called out the army for rescues, and then they canceled school, work, etc. for the southern part of the island over a day or so until the water receded. That was unexpected. That caught everybody off guard. Now, over to India. Worst floods in a century, kill scores in Kerala. That's over on the western coast of India. And when they're talking about worst floods in a century, they truly mean rivers going out of their banks. But remember, there's a lot of things that have been built in the last century because there have not been floods. So it was considered a stable area. And when you have the cities looking like this in the streets, well, that's a problem. And it's starting to happen everywhere. And beyond that, the floods that you've seen through India this year, Orissa earlier, northeast states of India. I mean, it's just everywhere you see, there's some bizarre weather event going on in India. Floods engulfing houses. I mean, these are streets. This should not be, but it is now. And as you go through the times of India, there's a lot more images, and then also you can backtrack to the other floods earlier in the year. Now over to Africa, let's take a look at Sudan. Now also you have to think about the Chinese. They have thousands and thousands of years of climatic record. They've been putting an enormous amount of investment in the northern Sahel, areas that are considered desert land, where they were just given tens of thousands of square miles by the governments just to come in and build rail lines, put up stations, start cities, etc. And now it starts to rain. And now these same areas are becoming green, and now as we move forward, they're going to be able to farm these areas that were once desert. Sudan, this is the third year in a row with massive floods. Niger, also third year in a row with massive floods. Look at Algeria in the desert. You see all that water in front. Those are riverbeds that were dry for thousands of years coming back to life. And if you go follow these riverbeds down far enough, you'll come to ancient cities that are buried in the sand. They left because there was not enough water. These rivers are beginning to reflow. So I don't know if this is a once in a 400-year cycle or once in more of a 3,600-year cycle or something, because the rains returning to the desert show that we're in a much heavier, much more powerful climate cycle repeating. If the deserts are becoming green again, that's a major shift across the entire planet. So you can see how much rain's coming down in Algeria. Also over in Kenya, third year in a row of massive floods. Lakes beginning to refill in Somalia, etc. with the runoff as we get through Ethiopia. Now, what I want to show you here is on the maps. They did a great job at Floodlist to pull all the locations of the massive floods. You notice we're in Sudan where the dots are. Anywhere it's a light tan, that's desert. Notice where it's beginning to rain in the desert. And I thought, okay, maybe that's one instance just on the East Coast. But look where it's beginning to rain also in Niger, Mali, and Chad, Algeria, in the desert. Not even in the brushlands, in the desert. And we say the same thing again. So if you combine between what you just saw in Mali, Niger, and Algeria, that whole area is going to become green again. That's thousands and thousands of square miles of new farmland forming. And guess who's there already with the rail tracks? China. Now, they have had to have known these cycles were repeating to be able to place everything there to get ready to start farming all these areas. Now, Hurricane Lane over in Hawaii, I know Hawaii gets hurricanes occasionally, but this is the first time in 25 years that it's rolled up through the islands like this. Back in 1992, Kauai Island, clear out west there near Niihau, that was pounded with hurricane and set the island back in development. But they haven't had a major hurricane since that time, but 30 inches of rain, not 20 inches. Now it's been confirmed at 30 inches. And the Big Island is reeling from all the volcanic eruptions, but now you have all this rain on top of all the eruption. Now, this is from California. Paul sent me this. Thank you so much for the images. Remember, this is a person who's trying to catch their own rainwater for use on their farm. You wouldn't think that this thing could really flood. Like, how much flood could really come out of this? Well, here you go. This is how much it could flood. And then you're getting waterfalls coming out of that due to upstream pushes on that. So whatever we're seeing is coming into the Uber in terms of the amount of precipitation coming down. I don't care what continent you go to, it's happening everywhere. And this is an indication that it's not a regional event, that it's a global event happening. Now the UK, massive temperature drop on tap right now. Looks to be 6 to 10 degrees Celsius below normal in the darker blue areas, and that's going to swing across through Germany. And snow is coming in Norway as we speak, along with Iceland. Again, we're starting to get a lot of positive lightning due to the atmospheric changes, the equalization, the shifts in the jet stream, magnetosphere, the electrical connection to our sun, which is driving all of this, which the IPCC doesn't want to talk about. So we get these massive floods in Italy, which you've seen again and again and again, in Greece, in Albania, and everywhere you look across Europe, Germany, France. It doesn't matter. Every street across all these countries are becoming rivers, literally, in the cities. Now, what's happening up in the gorges and higher up in the mountains before all this water sweeps through the cities, you're getting mass flash flooding through all the canyons, etc., wiping out bridges. And a perfect example, Austria, further downstream. All right, great. Well, this is right on a highway, and you can see this is in the middle of a city here coming out, and that right above it looks like an expressway leading down to a side service road there. More lightning. The lightning is just really intense lately, and it's going to continue to be intense enough where possible we'll start to see petroglyphs in the sky due to plasma discharges that are on the cave walls, and you'll start to understand the ancients were marking something that they truly saw in the skies. How much more electrification will it need to have within Earth's atmosphere before we see petroglyphs occurring with plasma discharge? To be determined. I'm saying 2021. Now, everywhere you see that light pink, that is considered torrential rain. Slovenia, Croatia, Austria, anywhere in the Adriatic, looks like Montenegro as well, Albania. So many of these other countries are going to be just smashed with record rainfall. Now, I want to come back to the forecast going out with the grand solar minimum here. As you can see, our solar activity is going to continue to diminish. And as it does, it just means the magnetic field on the sun is going to have less strength. And we're connected to that. The Earth's connected to it magnetically, electromagnetically. And as the sun's magnetic field diminishes, you're going to see more amplified on our planet. Our magnetosphere is going to weaken. The solar wind's going to stop or be greatly reduced compared to even what it is right now. And our jet streams are going to absolutely flow wherever they want to flow. They're not going to be locked in anywhere. So my prediction is this year or next, we're going to see snowstorms like this that are going to bury in entire cities in our modern world. So the Wheeler drought clock, it's all about the cycles. The floods are also included in the droughts. We have the flip. So anywhere you see a high point where there's not a drought, that's a flood. So you can start to see Where are we along this timeline? Are we even indeed in this 2,000-year timeline, or are we outside that into something in the 3,600-year timeline? Because whatever's happening is happening faster than the forecasts on the 400-year cycle. We're eclipsing, we're going into something more gargantuan, more great, more powerful cooling and weather amplification than I do believe you prepare 400-year level. I believe it's now something in the 3,600-year level, and it's absolutely going to sweep through all of our civilization on this planet. And this is why I do my video. I want you to be prepared. I want you to understand the changes so when it happens, you're not coming at it from fear. You can understand why, and you can explain to others why. Then you can prepare. Then you can get ready to thrive during these times because you're prepared. Thanks for watching. Hope you got something out of the video. I'm also posting this type of content on Steam in a blog post so you can see all the charts. You can read the text along with it. And I have the podcast Mini Ice Age Conversations tri-weekly that I talk about these same issues but for half hour at a time, and I do bring on guests so we can analyze deeper issues. And again, you can support me on Patreon or PayPal, and I'll see you in the next video.